Mike Palmer stared at the bank across the road. It was an old Regency-style building in Holborn, with its main entrance on the corner beside an alleyway. He observed customers enter and exit as part of their daily routine, completely oblivious to what he suspected was about to happen. A detective inspector in the Metropolitan's flying squad, he had been in this situation many times before, watching and waiting, anticipating when to make his move. He was sitting in the front of an unmarked BMW 3 Series, sipping from a plastic cup of coffee, hoping it would keep him focused. The bulletproof vest he wore was tight around his chest. He pulled at the collar to try and get some air. He had bags under his eyes and stubble across his chin. It had been a long 3 months of investigation with very little sleep, but he was sure it would culminate in the arrest of a man he had been chasing for nearly 2 years. Next to him, his partner, Detective Sergeant Jade Edmonds, took a sip of her coffee, though she clearly didn't need it. Her face was fresh and wide-eyed. Not one to wear makeup, she was content with her natural beauty. 10 years his junior in her 30s, Jade had managed to climb the ranks of the force incredibly quickly, garnering the attention of her bosses. She was a go-getter. To her, Detective Sergeant was just a brief stop on her pursuit towards the top. By busting this case alongside Mike, she would make a name for herself and, hopefully, one day surpass her partner. She turned to him. What if they don't show? Mike refused to pull his attention away from the bank. They will. But what if they don't? This could all be a ruse. He turned to her with a stern look. Doubt is not something I can afford right now, so I'd appreciate it if you kept yours to yourself. Jade was always questioning him. At first, he admired her candor. He liked to be challenged, and it made him analyze his methods and assumptions closely. But lately, it was beginning to grate on him. He felt like he was being criticized at every turn, and doubt is an infectious disease. Jade turned away, slightly embarrassed. Sorry. I was just curious if your informant is reliable, she said. Mike was now back to staring at the bank. He didn't want to miss a thing. He is, he replied confidently. Who is he? That's something only I need to know. You don't trust me? I don't trust a lot of people, Edmonds. Don't take it personally. And yet you trust your informant. He knows what happens if he lies to me. Mike glanced at his watch. A long crack across the glass had made it difficult to read the time, but Mike had learned to cope. It was 11:59 a.m. He had been assured the heist would take place at noon, which was only 30 seconds away. He was beginning to get concerned, but couldn't allow Jade to see. When he looked back at the bank, a dirty white transit van pulled up alongside the entrance. On the side of the vehicle, it read, Smith Commercial Cleaners Limited. Mike watched with interest as the rear doors burst open and 3 people jumped out. They were wearing white overalls, dust masks, tinted safety glasses, baseball caps, and gloves. To any passers-by, they would just look like tradesmen. But Mike knew the protocol, and the tool bags they carried could only contain one thing. Here we go, Mike said, sitting up straight. He lifted a radio to his lips. All units, this is Sierra 4-5, stand by. We take them as they leave, over. Jade was now leaning forward, the adrenaline coursing through her body. This was her first time staking out a location pre-heist, and she'd never felt so excited. Inside the bank, it was peaceful. Customers were going about their business, checking in money or withdrawing funds. As far as they were concerned, this was the most boring part of their day, but that was about to change. The front doors swung open, slamming against the adjacent wall with a bang. The 3 masked characters rushed inside, each pulling a sawn-off shotgun from their tool bags. The tallest member aimed his weapon into the air and fired a shot. The blast echoed around the room and caught the attention of everyone there. When the customers and employees turned to see where the explosion had originated, they were surprised to see the other two robbers walking toward them with shotguns targeted. Some froze in silent shock, while others screamed and cowered to the floor, covering their head with their hands. "Everybody remain calm," the tallest said as he lowered his weapon. "We don't wish for anyone to be hurt. We simply want the bank's money, and then we'll be on our way. Please, do not try to be a hero. It will not end well. If you all lay down on the floor, we will not see you as a threat." Those still standing dropped to the floor without hesitation. The last thing they wanted was a gut full of shot. The other two robbers had made their way over to the teller's counter, stepping over prostrate bodies. The shorter of the two aimed their shotgun at the nervous, middle-aged female employee shaking with fear in her seat. "Open the security door," the robber said, revealing her gender with a soft yet demanding voice. The employee wanted to comply, but she was too scared. She was worried the slightest wrong move could result in her being blasted across the room. The robber reached down beside her and reappeared with the hair of a customer in her clenched fist, lifting his flailing, whimpering body. She pressed the barrel of the shotgun up against his head. "Open it! Now!" she screamed. "Please!" the customer cried. The employee reacted by sliding off the high stool and scurrying over to the door beside her. She punched in the code on a keypad with a shaking finger, but was presented with a red light and an ear-piercing buzz. "Hurry up!" the robber screamed. "I'm trying," the employee replied. She tried to calm herself and focus on the keypad, entering the code slower to ensure she got it correctly this time. The light turned green, and there was a welcome beep. The employee almost fell backwards as the door opened towards her and a third robber pushed his way in. He raised his shotgun at her head, and she backed up against the wall, her hands high in surrender, face turned away from the weapon, wishing she could back up further. Tears were welling in her eyes, and she couldn't help but let out a pathetic murmur. "Everyone, down on the ground!" the third robber shouted at the employees with aggression. They fell to the floor, shielding themselves before he could finish his sentence. The short robber released her grip on the customer's hair, pushing him back down to the floor, and followed her compatriot through the security door. She stepped over the employees, making her way into the back rooms. The third robber held out his tool bag towards the still murmuring employee. "Empty the drawers," he ordered. She reluctantly took the bag from him and slowly made her way back toward the desk. She popped open the cash drawers and transferred the notes into the bag, her whole body now shaking. One of the prone male employees glanced up at her and then looked over at the third robber, distracted by the bag filling. He wanted to do something. If he timed it right, he could jump up quickly enough to tackle the robber and take his gun. He could then force the others to surrender. "Keep your head down," the third robber shouted at him, knowing full well what he was thinking. He dropped his head back down and reconsidered his idea, preferring instead to sniff the carpet. In a small back office, the smartly dressed bank manager was hunched over his desk, speaking quietly into the phone in a panicked state. "There's 3 of them. They're armed," he whispered. The short robber approached and snatched the phone from his hand. She smacked him across the face with the receiver, splitting his lip and flicking blood onto the white papers in front of him. She took hold of his tie and yanked him off his chair, leading him like a dog out of the room and down a corridor to a large safe door. He felt the barrel of the shotgun pressed up against the back of his head and let out a cry. "Open it," she said. "I can't," he replied, trying to hold back the tears. She forced the gun deeper into his skull, pushing his head up against the safe. "What's worth more, your job or your life?" she asked. The bank manager reached out with a trembling hand and turned the dial back and forth with haste. A loud click allowed him to twist a handle and pull the door open. Inside were shelves containing stacks of cash totaling around £200,000. Before he could beg for his life, he felt a sharp pain in the back of his head and collapsed to the ground, unconscious.